Hi everyone, this is Haulak and welcome to another Java tutorial session. In this session I will be discussing Java constructors. So Java constructors to begin basically allows you to create or instantiate, which is the proper terminology, instantiate an object of that particular class. Constructors also are used to initialize the objects before the class can actually use it. Okay, so let's begin with some code. Alright, now here I have my typical class main, which is generated by IntelliJ. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the my first class. Okay, so I'm going to get started on that. I'm going to create a subclass. Alright. So let me just start that. You notice I'm calling it a subclass because the intention is that I'm going to end up creating an actual superclass as well. Because a discussion on constructors is not complete if you don't include a discussion on inheritance hierarchy. Alright. So let's start with that. Okay. So I don't have a subclass, so let's get IntelliJ to actually create that for me. Alright, so there we go. I'm going to zoom in a little so you can see that. Alright, so here we are. And the first thing you notice is that if you don't have any constructor, the class provides you with a default no argument constructor. Okay, this is the reason why you can actually, there's no errors here. Okay, there's no compile time, right? It knows how to resolve and create a subclass object here. All right, so that's the first thing to note. Now let's. What I'm going to do is I'm going to manually. You usually don't do this. I'm going to create a constructor with an argument. Okay, so let's just say string. All right. All right. So now that I did that, you're going to notice that there's an error here. Okay. So it cannot be applied. So this tells you one thing. The designers of Java decided that if you actually have a constructor that takes arguments, it won't provide you with a no-arg constructor. Okay, so the implication is that if you know that the type of objects that you're creating and what type of parameters you're going to actually create the objects with, they're not going to provide you with a constructor. All right. So to get rid of this error, all right, we will have to. See, so the option is to remove the first parameter or to create another constructor. So I'm going to do that. All right. Now I like to organize the constructor so that the one with the least number of parameters is always the first in the class. All right. Okay. So now I'm going to generate the field for this. All right. So I'm going to generate the field. Okay. Fine. All right, so IntelliJ does that for me. So far so good. All right. So what I like to do also is include some. I want to do some prints out as well, so I can keep track of when constructors are being called. It's easier to keep track of what Java is actually doing. I'm going to put in line 7. Alright, so this is my static import, so I don't keep on having to type system. Okay, so first here I'm going to do the print out here. Okay, so I'm just going to say subclass no arg. Okay, so that's what I'll do there. Alright, done. Now I'll do the same thing here as well. Right. So let's go back in here and subclass dot one arg. All right. So it's just to allow us to keep track. So if I run it now, oops, sorry, run. All right, so I get the subclass no arg, right? No surprise here, because that's what I did there. All right, and I can have another subclass. Let's see, A, and this will take an argument. Say hello. Okay, so let's see, subclass with one arg. Alright, so let's do that. I'm going to run it. No surprise, this is what it does. Alright, so far everything looks good. Alright, so now I'm going to generate the superclass and have the subclass inherit that class. Alright, so let's just do that. Come up here. So I have my superclass. Alright, we'll zoom in. It's too big. Okay, and again I'll put the static import up here. Right, there we go. So now we can use the. Right. So in my superclass, I'm going to have. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have public superclass. Alright, so I have my no arg. Alright, so I'm just gonna put that in. Alright, so and then here dot out. Okay, and superclass. This is just so I know what's going on, what's being called. Alright, so there's the no arg. Alright, and again I'll have another one. I just have two. Okay, so superclass, and I'm just gonna take. You should use a bit of variable names, but they should be fine. All right, let's keep it simple and say D. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to generate the fields for it. All right, create field, fine. Create field. Okay. Yes. Alright, so there's our field. Okay. And because I'm kind of lazy at type, I'm going to copy that and move it down. This is a 2R. Alright. Alright, so far so good. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it. Okay, I'm going to run this. Alright. And so far, it prints the same thing, so we don't really get any new real information. Okay. So before I go any further, let's introduce you to this keyword, right, in the context of invoking other constructors. So I can actually do this. So for my default, I can actually put in, so let's say 0 and 1.0. All right. So it has to be the first statement. So what this is doing is that this is invokes the toArg constructor. Okay. If I move it down, it'll give me an error. It has to be the first line in the constructor. All right. So now if I actually run it, so let's try and run it again. All right. So there's no new information. Okay. And the thing is that the reason why is that I haven't extended. I haven't inherited the superclass yet. All right. Okay, so now I've actually inherited the superclass. Now if I run it again, all right, let's just make sure I do it one at a time so we get some learning out of it. Okay, so what's happening here? We have our subclass, right? And it says that the printout, right? Because what we're actually doing is that we're calling this, all right? But notice that the printout is at the bottom. So what's happening is that subclass is calling the superclass, all right? Okay, so it's calling a superclass right here, all right? So this is what's happening, all right? well, actually, the actual path that's happening is that it actually calls this, which this is the reason why you see this, and then it comes back and returns and calls this, and then finally it calls this. All right. The reason why is this. Okay. What's really happening here is that implicitly, right, some Java developers actually like to include this and make it explicit. Right. This is actually what's happening. It's calling the super constructor, right, the no arg, right, of the superclass, which in here it invokes this. So this is the reason why we see this print out first. After that's done, it prints this, and then of course, based on increase that, based on the stack calls, right, when it pops off the stack, then you finally get this. All right, so that's what's happening, right? So this is implicit. Some people don't like to put it, but you want to make it explicit. This makes the code more readable. Okay, so that's what's happening there. Again, we can comment this other one out, all right, and do this, and then you see that it's going to be quite similar. All right, so again, for the subclass, right, we could have included this, all right. Okay, so this is, you want to make it explicit, all right, and run it again. Again, the output is the same, right? So it's actually implicitly calling this, and this, of course, because we're using this keyword, calling this, right? This gets printed first, and then this, and then we return back to the subclass. Okay. Now, what you could also do is invoke it directly, all right? So here we actually call it, because remember that we're interested in, say that we know what it is, right? Although this is not a good way to do it. We could also do it this way, right? You could also call this directly, right? Well, it doesn't have to be. It could be any number, right? It could be 12, right? And 20, all right? So, so if I do this, all right, it actually skips. It doesn't call this, all right? It goes directly to here. That's the reason why we see it, right? And it prints this out. And then of course it prints its the subclass.r. Okay, so we could do this, but this is not good practice. You should keep it this way. Okay, that's the reason why you created all this nice code, so you can actually reuse some of it. All right. So now the other thing to note is that constructors are not inherited by the class. Okay, so you don't. So the subclass doesn't inherit any constructors. Okay, it just uses it. Okay, hence the call here. All right. So that's the other thing to note. Now, now super is also used. You can actually invoke methods as well. All right, from the superclass. So let's try that. All right. So let's say public void. So let's say useful method. Right. So I'm gonna give it, it's a silly kind of name. All right. So I'm just gonna print this out. So I'm gonna do that, and then again superclass dot useful method. All right. So we have that. Okay. And we come back in here. We can actually we can override it. Okay, so we can override that class. Right, so this is the class we want. Right, we can override. And look how IntelliJ fills it in. So if you want to, so for example, if you're inheriting that class, okay, superclass, right, and you get useful method. So you're overriding useful method. Okay. Now, notice that it automatically assumes that you're going to you're going to basically call this, right? You're going to call useful method from the superclass, right? And then you can return it back. Okay, so here I'll do some printouts. Okay. So in here, useful method. All right. And now we go back to main. We can actually call that useful method. All right. And we run it. Okay, so we run it, you see that it calls the superclass's useful method first, and then its own overridden method. Right? Okay, so that's what we're seeing here. Now the other question is, do subclasses inherit private methods or instance variable? All right. So, well, the answer is no, but you're not convinced. Let's make that as private, right? And then you see that there it is. Let's hover it, my mouse over that, and it says a useful method has private access in the superclass, right? So, no, right? And then even here, all right, method does not override method from its superclass, right? So, to answer anybody's question wondering, do you inherit private members of a superclass? The answer is no, right? The Java specification even clearly states that. Okay, now, does that mean that, well, private members are not inherited, right? But if the superclass allows subclasses to see it, to have access to it, it could, right? And we know that through these various access modifiers you could do that. Okay, so and I think that is about it for constructors. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, and hope to see you again next time. Take care. Bye.